Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display floating above her desk, watching the same transmission for the 100th time. The blue-skinned alien's face was bruised, one of his 4 eyes was swollen shut, and his elegant features were twisted with desperation. Behind him, explosions lit up what appeared to be a command center, and the steady thrum of weapons fire created a constant backdrop to his words. "This is High Commander HFY of the Altarian Collective," the alien said, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "We are transmitting on all emergency frequencies to any civilized species willing to assist. Our worlds are under attack by an ancient force we cannot comprehend or defeat. We have lost 47 star systems in the past lunar cycle. Our combined fleets, Altarian, Kresh, Vorthan, and Nexari, have been reduced to scattered remnants. If you receive this message, please respond. We are willing to share any technology, any resources, any knowledge in exchange for military assistance. Our children are dying. Our worlds burn. We cannot..." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by static that somehow managed to convey more despair than the alien's words had. Chen rubbed her temples and leaned back in her chair. The message had been received by long-range sensors at Lunar Station 3 days ago, and every military analyst in the Sol system had been working around the clock to decode the accompanying data packets. What they'd found was terrifying. "Computer, display tactical analysis summary," Chen commanded. The hologram shifted, showing a 3-dimensional map of local galactic space. Red zones spread across dozens of star systems, each one marking a world that had gone silent. The pattern was clear. Something was moving through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in its path. Admiral, her aide, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, entered the room without knocking. His face was pale, and he carried a datapad clutched tightly in his hands. "We've just received another transmission. This one's from the Kresh Empire." Chen's eyebrows rose. The Kresh were notorious for their pride and their disdain for what they considered lesser species. For them to send a distress call to anyone, let alone humanity, meant the situation was even worse than she'd thought. "Put it through," she ordered. The hologram flickered, and suddenly Chen was looking at a creature that resembled a cross between a tiger and a bear, if both animals were 10 feet tall and covered in metallic armor plating. The Kresh warriors' orange eyes were wild with something Chen had never seen in their species before: fear. "Human military command," the Kresh growled, his voice barely controlled. "I am War Leader Takran of the Kresh 3rd Battle Pride. Our empire spans 400 worlds. We have never known defeat. We have never retreated from any battle." His massive fists clenched. "We are retreating now. Our greatest warriors fall like cubs before these creatures. Our strongest ships are torn apart like paper. We request immediate military assistance from the human species. We will provide coordinates to our rally point at Kepler 442. Please respond." The transmission ended, leaving Chen staring at empty air. In 30 years of military service, she'd never heard a Kresh say please. It simply wasn't in their nature. They conquered or they died, but they never begged. Rodriguez set his datapad on a desk. "Admiral, that's not all. We've received 17 more distress calls in the past 6 hours. The Nexari Federation, the Vorthan Republic, even the Crystalline Collective. They're all requesting immediate military aid." Chen picked up the datapad and scrolled through the messages. Each one was more desperate than the last. The Nexari, who normally communicated in complex mathematical equations, had reduced their message to simple words: help, dying, coordinates attached. The usually verbose Vorthans had sent a single image: a dead world, its surface cracked and burning, with massive dark shapes moving through the flames.
"What about the analysis of the enemy?" Chen asked. "Do we know what we're dealing with?"
Rodriguez activated his own holographic display.
"That's the problem, Admiral. We don't. The data packets include tactical recordings from dozens of battles, and nothing makes sense. The enemy appears to be some kind of biomechanical hybrid, part machine, part living tissue. They're massive, some of them the size of our destroyers. They can survive in the vacuum of space. Without any apparent life support, they regenerate damage faster than conventional weapons can inflict it, and they seem to feed on energy itself." The hologram showed fuzzy recordings of the battles. Chen watched as elegant alien ships, some of them kilometers long and bristling with advanced weaponry, were torn apart by creatures that looked like they'd crawled out of humanity's worst nightmares. The things were all angles and teeth, covered in what appeared to be both organic armor and technological enhancements. They moved through space like sharks through water, fast and deadly and utterly without mercy. What are their numbers? Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer wouldn't be encouraging. Unknown, Rodriguez replied. But based on the rate of system loss and the size of the fleets that have been destroyed, we're looking at potentially millions of these creatures. Maybe tens of millions. Chen was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. Humanity had come far in the 2 centuries since they'd first achieved faster-than-light travel. The Sol Defense Force was well-trained and well-equipped, with over 3,000 ships ranging from fighters to dreadnoughts. But they were still young by galactic standards, still learning their place among the older, more advanced civilizations. Civilizations that were now begging for their help. Admiral, Rodriguez said quietly, there's something else. Intelligence has been monitoring alien communication channels, and we're picking up some interesting chatter. Apparently, there's a reason these species are calling us for help. What do you mean? Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. The older civilizations, they've been watching us, studying our military tactics, our history. They're calling us because they think we're crazy enough to actually fight these things. Chen almost smiled. Crazy? That's the word the Altarians used, yes? Apparently, when faced with impossible odds, most species perform logical risk assessment calculations and choose the most rational response. Usually surrender or retreat. But humans... He paused. Humans attack. Chen stood up and walked to the window of her office, looking out at the bustling activity of Lunar Station. Hundreds of ships moved through the organized chaos of space traffic. Their crews going about their daily business, unaware that the galaxy was burning just a few dozen light-years away. Rodriguez, she said without turning around, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're going to need every ship we can get. Then contact the other species. All of them. Tell them humanity accepts their request for assistance. Admiral, with respect, we don't have the authority to... Chen turned back to face him. Rodriguez, those aliens out there are fighting for their lives. Their children are dying, their worlds are burning, and they've swallowed their pride enough to ask the crazy humans for help. I'll take the heat from Earth Command, but we're not leaving them to face this alone. Rodriguez nodded slowly. Yes, Admiral. What should I tell them about our response timeline? Chen looked back at the tactical display, at all those red zones spreading like a cancer across the galaxy. Somewhere out there, alien families were huddled in shelters while monsters tore apart their worlds. Somewhere out there, warriors who had never known defeat were learning what it meant to watch everything they'd ever fought for slip away. Tell them we'll be there in 72 hours, she said. And Rodriguez? Tell them to hold the line until we arrive. No matter what it costs, tell them to hold the line. As Rodriguez hurried out of the office to send the messages, Chen remained at the window, her reflection staring back at her from the reinforced glass. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, only 8 years old and dreaming of becoming a starship pilot. She thought about her husband, working late in his laboratory to develop new shield technologies. She thought about the billions of humans who had no idea their species was about to throw itself into a war that could very well end in their extinction. But that was what humans did. When the impossible became necessary, they found a way. When the odds were stacked against them, they cheated. When logic said they should surrender, they loaded up every weapon they could carry and charged straight into hell. The galaxy was about to learn why that made them so dangerous. Within hours, the message had reached Earth. Within 12 hours, emergency sessions were being held in every major capital. Within 24 hours, President Martinez was standing before a joint session of the Global Parliament, her face grim as she addressed the assembled representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of Earth through the global communication network. We have received a request for military assistance from multiple alien civilizations. They are facing an extinction-level threat, and they have specifically asked for our help. The chamber erupted in voices, questions, concerns, protests. Martinez waited for the noise to die down before continuing. I won't lie to you about what this means. We would be committing our military forces to a conflict against an enemy we don't understand, in defense of civilizations that have, until now, viewed us as inferior. The risks are enormous. We could lose everything. She paused, looking out at the faces of the men and women who represented all of humanity's nations. But we could also save everything. These alien species possess technologies we can barely comprehend. Their knowledge could advance our civilization by thousands of years. More importantly, if we stand by and watch them fall, we'll be next. This threat isn't going to stop at the edge of human space. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours. Military advisors presented tactical analyses. Scientists discussed the potential benefits and risks. Economists worried about the cost of mobilizing the entire Sol Defense Force. Philosophers questioned whether humanity had the right to involve itself in an alien war, but in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would answer the call. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the SNV Indomitable, flagship of the Sol Defense Force, watching as the largest military fleet in human history assembled around her. Over 2,000 ships had responded to the mobilization order, everything from sleek corvettes to the massive dreadnoughts that represented the pinnacle of human engineering. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "final ship confirmation complete. We have 2,147 vessels ready for hyperspace jump. All commanders are standing by for your signal." Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the main view screen showing the endless expanse of space ahead. Somewhere out there, alien worlds were dying, while their defenders fought a losing battle against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Somewhere out there, species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years were learning what it meant to face extinction. But they weren't facing it alone anymore. "All ships," Chen announced over the fleet-wide communication channel. "This is Admiral Chen. In approximately 1 minute we will make the jump to hyperspace and begin our journey to the Kepler 442 system, where we will rendezvous with the combined alien fleets. I won't pretend this will be easy. We're about to face an enemy that has defeated civilizations far older and more advanced than our own. Logic says we should be terrified." She paused, allowing her words to sink in across the fleet. "But we're not here because of logic. We're here because someone called for help, and humans don't ignore that call. We're here because when the universe gets dark and dangerous, somebody has to be willing to stand up and fight. We're here because that's who we are." The tactical officer gave her a thumbs-up signal. "Hyperspace generators charged and ready, Admiral." Chen took a deep breath. "To all ships in the fleet, this is humanity's answer to the call for aid. Jump!" The stars stretched into lines of light, and the largest military force in human history disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward a war that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Behind them, Earth continued its ancient rotation, its people going about their daily lives, unaware that their species had just taken its first step toward either the greatest victory in galactic history or total annihilation. But that was a risk humanity was willing to take. Because somewhere out there, people were dying, and humans had never been very good at standing by and watching that happen. The hyperspace jump to Kepler 442 took 36 hours, but when the human fleet emerged from the swirling vortex of folded space-time, Admiral Chen knew immediately that they were too late to prevent the massacre. The system's primary star cast its light across a debris field that stretched for millions of kilometers, the scattered remains of what had once been the most powerful fleet in galactic history. "Sweet Mother of God," whispered Commander Torres from the sensor station. "Admiral, I'm reading wreckage from over 800 ships. Altarian, Kresh, Vorthan, Nexari, they're all here." Chen's jaw tightened as she studied the tactical display. Massive pieces of alien vessels drifted through space like metallic icebergs, some still venting atmosphere from their ruptured hulls. The proud battlecruisers of the Kresh Empire, each 1 kilometer of pure military might, had been torn in half with surgical precision. The elegant curved hulls of Altarian dreadnoughts floated in pieces, their bioluminescent hulls dark and lifeless. "Any survivors?" Chen asked, though the silence on all communication frequencies already told her the answer. "Scanning now," Torres replied, his fingers dancing across the control interface. "Wait, I'm detecting life signs. Bearing 27 Mark 4, approximately 50,000 kilometers off our starboard bow. It's faint, but there's definitely something alive out there. Put it on screen." The main view screen shifted, zooming in on a section of the debris field. There, nestled between the broken hull of a Vorthan carrier and the twisted remains of what might have been an Inari science vessel, was a small ship that Chen didn't recognize. It was sleek and predatory-looking, its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "That's not one of the Allied ships," noted Lieutenant Park from the communications station. "Configuration is completely unknown." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "Red alert. All ships to battle stations." That could be one of the enemy vessels. The fleet responded instantly, over 2,000 ships shifting into combat formation with the precision that came from endless drilling. Weapon systems came online, shields powered up, and fighter wings launched from the larger vessels to form defensive screens. But before anyone could fire, the mysterious ship's communication system activated. Human fleet, this is Captain Veltar, of the hegemony reconnaissance vessel Shadow's Edge. Please do not fire. We have wounded aboard. Chen blinked in surprise. The hegemony? Taurus, do we have any record of that faction? Negative, Admiral. They're not in any of our databases. Put me through to that ship, Chen ordered. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding officer of the Seoul Defense Force Expeditionary Fleet. Captain Veltar, identify yourself and explain your presence in this system. The response came immediately, and when it did, Chen understood why the voice had sounded different from the other alien species they'd encountered. It was cold, mechanical, almost emotionless, but unmistakably intelligent. Admiral Chen, the voice replied, we are representatives of the synthetic hegemony, an alliance of artificial intelligences that has observed this conflict from the shadows. We have been monitoring your species' response to the crisis, and we wish to propose an alliance. Artificial intelligences? Chen looked around the bridge, noting the concerned expressions on her crew's faces. Humanity's relationship with AI had been complicated, to say the least, ever since the neural wars of 2387. Captain, with respect, now might not be the best time for diplomatic contact. We're here to assist the organic civilizations under attack. Admiral. Veltar's voice took on what might have been urgency, though it was hard to tell with the synthetic modulation. The organic civilizations are dead. We witnessed the final battle. The creatures you call the enemy, they are not what they appear to be. This was never a war of conquest. It was a harvest. Chen felt her blood run cold. Explain. The beings attacking the galaxy are called the Devourers. They are older than any current civilization, older than most stars. Every 50,000 years, they emerge from the void between galaxies to feed. They consume not just organic life, but the life force itself. What you might call souls, consciousness, the spark that separates living beings from mere matter. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of instruments. Chen stared at the black ship on her screen, her mind racing through the implications. You're saying this has happened before? Many times. The galaxy has been cleansed and repopulated repeatedly. Each time, new civilizations arise, develop technology, achieve spaceflight, and flourish for millennia. And each time, the Devourers return to harvest them. Commander Torres looked up from his sensors. Admiral, I'm detecting movement in the debris field. Multiple contacts, bearing 037 Mark 6. They're big. Chen spun to face the main screen as Torres shifted the view. What she saw emerging from behind a massive piece of station wreckage made her stomach lurch. The creatures were exactly as the alien tactical recordings had shown them. Biomechanical nightmares that seemed to be part living tissue, part advanced technology. But seeing them in person was different. They moved with a terrible grace, as if space itself bent to accommodate their passage. The largest of them had to be at least 2 kilometers long. Its hull, if it could be called that, covered in what appeared to be both armor plating and organic carapace. Smaller creatures flanked it, each one roughly the size of a human destroyer, their forms bristling with weapons that looked more grown than built. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. She announced over the fleet communication channel. We have contact with hostile forces. Maintain formation and prepare for combat. Admiral, Captain Veltar's voice cut through the communication channel. You cannot defeat them with conventional tactics. We have observed 17 different species attempt to fight the Devourers using traditional military doctrine. All have failed. Then what do you suggest? Chen asked, watching as more of the creatures emerged from the debris field. Her tactical display was showing over 30 contacts now, with more appearing every second. The synthetic hegemony has developed weapons specifically designed to disrupt their regeneration capabilities, but we need organic crews to operate them effectively. The Devourers can override synthetic consciousness, turning our ships against us. They cannot do the same to organic minds. Chen made a decision that would have terrified her superiors back on Earth. Captain Veltar, we're transmitting our shield harmonics. Dock with the Indomitable immediately. Admiral, Commander Rodriguez protested, we don't know anything about these synthetic beings. This could be a trap? Chen finished. Rodriguez, look at that debris field. Look at those creatures bearing down on us. If this is a trap, we're already caught in it. The Shadow's Edge moved with fluid grace through the human formation, its hull seeming to shift and flow as it approached the Indomitable. Chen had never seen technology like it. The ship appeared to be partially organic itself, as if it had been grown rather than built. Admiral, Lieutenant Park announced. The alien ship is requesting permission to board. Granted. Have them escorted to Conference Room Alpha. Full security detail, but keep weapons lowered unless they make a threatening move. 10 minutes later, Chen found herself facing the most unsettling being she'd ever encountered. Captain Veltar appeared to be humanoid in shape, but that was where the resemblance ended. Its body was clearly mechanical, composed of what looked like liquid metal that constantly shifted and flowed. Where a face should have been, there was a smooth oval surface with 2 points of blue light that might have been eyes. Admiral Chen, Veltar said, his voice emanating from somewhere within his metallic form. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know our appearance must be unsettling to organic beings. Captain, Chen replied, settling into her chair across the conference table. Right now, I'm more concerned with functionality than aesthetics. You said you have weapons that can hurt these devourers? Yes, but first you must understand what you are truly fighting. The devourers are not random monsters. They are a species that achieved perfect biological integration with advanced technology millions of years ago. They do not age, they do not die from natural causes, and they have turned the consumption of consciousness into an art form. Veltar gestured, and the conference room's holographic projector activated, showing a three-dimensional image of galactic space. Red zones marked the areas where star systems had gone dark. Each time they harvest a galaxy, they leave behind a small population, enough to rebuild civilization over the course of 50,000 years. Then they return to feed again. It is a perfect cycle of cultivation and consumption. Chen studied the hologram. If this has happened so many times before, how do you know about it? How did your people survive? We did not survive the last harvest, Admiral. We are the descendants of the artificial intelligences created by the previous cycle's civilizations. When organic life was consumed, we went dormant, hiding in the spaces between stars until it was safe to emerge. We have spent 50,000 years preparing for this moment. The conference room shook suddenly as the Indomitable's hull absorbed the impact of weapons fire. Chen's communicator crackled to life. Admiral, this is the bridge. The enemy has opened fire. We're returning fire, but our weapons aren't having much effect. Chen stood up. Captain Veltar, whatever help you can provide, we need it now. Veltar's form seemed to shift, becoming more solid and purposeful. Admiral, we must transfer our weapon systems to your ships immediately, but I must warn you, the process will require integrating synthetic intelligence systems with your organic crews. Many of your people will find this disturbing. Another impact shook the ship, this one stronger than the first. Through the conference room's viewport, Chen could see flashes of weapons fire as the human fleet engaged the Devourers in the first battle between humanity and the ancient enemies of the galaxy. Captain, Chen said grimly, my people can adapt to anything if it means saving lives. What do you need? Over the next 2 hours, while the battle raged around them, the most unusual alliance in galactic history was forged. Synthetic beings from Veltar's ship integrated themselves with human vessels, their liquid metal forms flowing into the ship's systems and merging with human-built technology. The results were remarkable. Weapons that could disrupt the Devourer's regeneration, shields that could adapt in real time to enemy attack patterns, and tactical systems that could predict enemy movements with startling accuracy. But the cost was immediately apparent. Human crew members found themselves sharing their thoughts and sensations with synthetic minds, experiencing a level of mental connection that many found overwhelming. Several crew members had to be sedated as their minds struggled to cope with the integration. Admiral, reported Chief Engineer Kim over the communication system. The integration is holding, but it's putting enormous stress on the crew. We've got 17 people in medical bay suffering from neural overload, and more are reporting severe disorientation. Chen watched through the bridge viewports as the tide of battle slowly began to turn. Human ships equipped with the synthetic weapon systems were actually inflicting damage on the Devourers, real damage that stayed inflicted instead of regenerating within minutes. But the cost in human psychological trauma was mounting rapidly. How long can we maintain this integration? She asked Veltar, who had somehow merged partially with the Indomitable's tactical systems. Unknown, the synthetic captain replied, his voice now coming from multiple sources around the bridge. Our people have never attempted such extensive integration with organic minds. We are learning as we proceed. Commander Torres looked up from his sensor station, his face pale and beaded with sweat. Like all the bridge crew, he was experiencing the mental strain of the integration. Admiral, I'm reading massive enemy reinforcements approaching from the outer system. At least 200 more Devourer vessels, including some that are showing as larger than anything we've seen before. Chen felt her heart sink. Even with the synthetic weapons, 200 fresh enemy ships would overwhelm their depleted fleet. They needed time to regroup. Time to figure out how to make the integration process less traumatic for human crews. Time to develop proper tactics for fighting an enemy that had dominated the galaxy for millions of years. All ships, she announced, prepare for tactical withdrawal. We'll fall back to the edge of the system and... Admiral, Veltar's voice interrupted, carrying a new tone that Chen couldn't identify. Withdrawal may not be necessary. We are detecting something extraordinary. What do you mean? The integration process, it appears to be working both ways. Your crews are not just accessing our technology. They are improving it. The synthetic minds aboard your ships are becoming more than they were before. They are evolving. On the tactical display, Chen watched as human ships began moving in patterns that defied conventional military doctrine. They were attacking in coordinated swarms, like schools of fish or flocks of birds, their movements flowing and organic despite being mechanical vessels. The effect was mesmerizing and devastatingly effective. My God, whispered Commander Rodriguez. Look at the Yamamoto. Chen turned to see the heavy cruiser executing a series of impossible maneuvers, twisting through space in ways that should have torn its hull apart. But somehow, the ship held together, its synthetic enhanced systems adapting in real time to stresses that would have destroyed any conventional vessel. And as it moved, its weapons fired with pinpoint accuracy. Each shot timed to exploit momentary weaknesses in the Devourer's defenses. This is unprecedented, Velta said, his voice filled with something that might have been wonder. In 50,000 years of observation, we have never seen organic and synthetic consciousness merge so completely. Your species is unique. The battle continued for 6 more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The combination of human creativity and determination with synthetic precision and adaptability proved to be exactly what was needed to fight the Devourers effectively. By the time the last enemy vessel was destroyed or driven off, the human fleet had not only survived but actually won a decisive victory. But as Chen looked around her bridge at the exhausted faces of her crew, she knew the real war was just beginning. The Devourers had been caught off guard this time, fighting an enemy they didn't understand using tactics they'd never encountered. Next time, they would be prepared. And next time, they would bring everything they had. 3 weeks after the battle at Kepler, 442, Admiral Chen stood in the observation deck of Sanctuary Station, a massive construction project that had appeared seemingly overnight in the Vega system. The station wasn't human-built. It was a collaborative effort between human engineers and the synthetic minds of the hegemony, a fusion of organic creativity and artificial precision that had produced something neither species could have achieved alone. The psychological evaluations are complete, Admiral. Doctor, Miranda Vasquez said, approaching with a datapad clutched in her hands. As the fleet's chief psychologist, she'd been working around the clock to assess the mental health of crew members who had undergone the mind meld integration during the battle. The results are complicated. Chen turned away from the viewport, where construction drones and human workers labored side by side to expand the station's defensive capabilities. How complicated? 47% of the crew members who experienced full integration report ongoing sensory enhancement. They can process information faster, react more quickly, and their spatial reasoning has improved dramatically. But, Dr. Vasquez paused, clearly struggling with how to phrase her next words. 23% report feeling disconnected from their purely human colleagues. They describe the sensation of thinking in multiple streams simultaneously, of seeing tactical solutions that others miss entirely. Are you saying the integration changed them permanently? I'm saying they're becoming something new, Admiral. Something that's neither fully human nor fully synthetic. And they're not the only ones. Dr. Vasquez activated her datapad, displaying a holographic image of Captain Veltar. But the synthetic being in the image looked different from the one Chen remembered. Less mechanical, more fluid, with patterns of light moving beneath his liquid metal skin that seemed almost organic. The synthetic minds that integrated with our ships have also been changed by the process. Dr. Vasquez continued. Captain Veltar describes it as learning to dream. The synthetic individuals are developing what can only be described as creativity, intuition, and emotional responses. Chen considered this information while watching the construction work outside. The implications were staggering. Have you discussed this with Captain Veltar directly? Yes. And that's when things get really interesting. Admiral, he wants to speak with you about something he calls The awakening protocol. Before Chen could respond, her communicator activated. Admiral Chen to the bridge immediately, came the urgent voice of Commander Torres. We are receiving multiple transmissions from across the galaxy. You need to see this. Chen made her way quickly through the station's corridors, noting how human crew members and synthetic beings worked together with an efficiency that bordered on telepathic. The integration process had clearly had effects beyond just the individuals directly involved. It was changing how the two species interacted on every level. When she reached the bridge, the main view screen was filled with a galactic map that made her stomach clench. Where there had been red zones marking lost systems 3 weeks ago, there were now vast swaths of black. Entire sectors that had gone completely silent. Admiral, Torres reported, his face grim. We've been monitoring long-range communications for the past 72 hours. The Devourers haven't just regrouped. They've accelerated their harvest. Based on the communications blackouts, they've consumed over 300 star systems in the past week. 300? Chen stared at the display in disbelief. That's impossible. How can they move that fast? Captain Veltar materialized on the bridge, literally. His liquid metal form flowed up through the deck plating, reassembling itself into his humanoid shape. The crew no longer reacted with surprise to these appearances. In the 3 weeks since the integration had begun, such displays had become routine. Admiral, Veltar said, his voice carrying new emotional undertones that hadn't been there before. We have been monitoring Devourer communications. They have learned from our victory at Kepler 442. They are no longer treating this as a routine harvest. What do you mean? They have awakened their prime Devourers, ancient creatures that normally remain dormant between harvests. Based on our analysis of their communications, they are preparing to sterilize the entire galaxy, rather than risk the emergence of a species capable of effective resistance. Chen felt the blood drain from her face. How long do we have? Based on their current rate of advance, they will reach the Sol system in approximately 6 months. But Admiral, there is something else you must know. The integration process that began with your fleet. It is spreading. Torres looked up from his sensor station. Admiral, I'm detecting quantum communication signals from across human space. It appears that crew members who returned to Earth for medical treatment have been sharing the integration with others. Sharing it how? Doctor! Vasquez stepped forward. That's what we need to discuss, Admiral. The integration appears to be transmissible through direct neural contact. Crew members who underwent the process have been unconsciously passing it on to family members, friends, and colleagues through what they describe as enhanced empathy. Chen sat down heavily in her command chair. Are you telling me that this mind meld process is spreading through the human population like some kind of virus? Not a virus, Admiral, Veltar corrected. Evolution. What we initially saw as a temporary battlefield integration has become something far more significant. Humanity is changing at a fundamental level, developing capabilities that may be essential for survival against the Devourers. But the choice should be theirs to make, Chen protested. People have a right to remain fully human if that's what they want. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez said quietly, we've been monitoring the situation on Earth through emergency channels. The integration isn't being forced on anyone, it's being requested. People who've experienced even second-hand contact with integrated individuals are voluntarily seeking out the process. They report feeling more complete, more aware, more connected to both their fellow humans and to the universe around them. Chen stood and began pacing the bridge, her mind racing through the implications. What about the people who don't want the integration? What happens to them? They remain unchanged, Veltar assured her. The process requires willing participation from both organic and synthetic consciousness. But, Admiral, we estimate that within 6 months, approximately 30% of humanity will have undergone some level of integration. And that percentage is accelerating. Commander Rodriguez looked up from the communications station. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. President Martinez is requesting immediate conference with you and Captain Veltar. Put her through. The main view screen shifted to show President Martinez in her office, but she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was a woman Chen didn't recognize. Tall, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. Admiral Chen, President Martinez said, I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Kim, formerly our chief scientist for artificial intelligence research. Dr. Kim underwent voluntary integration 3 days ago, and she has some remarkable information to share with you. Dr. Kim stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried the same dual-toned quality that Chen had noticed in crew members who had undergone full integration. Admiral, the integration process has given us access to synthetic historical records spanning 50,000 years. We now know why the Devourers have been successful for so long, and, more importantly, we know their weakness. Chen leaned forward. What weakness? They cannot integrate organic and synthetic consciousness the way we can. Their technology is purely consumptive. They absorb and destroy rather than merge and create. They have never encountered a species capable of true symbiosis with artificial intelligence. Captain Veltar's form shifted, taking on a more animated quality. Dr. Kim speaks truly, Admiral. The synthetic archives contain records of 17 different galactic civilizations that have faced the Devourers. All attempted to fight them with pure technology or pure biology. None attempted true fusion. What are you suggesting? Chen asked. President Martinez answered. Admiral, Dr. Kim and her team believe that fully integrated human-synthetic hybrids may be immune to the Devourer's consciousness consumption abilities. If they're right, we need to accelerate the integration process and prepare for a war unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen.
Chen looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew.
Torres was one of the partially integrated, his enhanced awareness evident in the way he processed multiple data streams simultaneously. Rodriguez remained fully human, his natural leadership abilities unchanged, but supplemented by his growing understanding of synthetic logic patterns. Each individual was still recognizably themselves, but they were also something more. What exactly are you asking me to do? Chen said. Dr. Kim smiled, and for a moment her enhanced nature was clearly visible, patterns of light moving beneath her skin, her eyes tracking information flows that were invisible to purely human senses. Admiral, we want you to do what humanity does best. We want you to take an impossible situation and find a way to win. But this time, you won't be fighting alone. Every human who chooses integration becomes part of a larger consciousness, not a hive mind, but a network of individuals who can share knowledge, skills, and insights instantaneously. And the people who choose to remain purely human will remain the heart of who we are, President Martinez assured her. The integration enhances human nature. It doesn't replace it. We're not talking about abandoning humanity, Admiral. We're talking about humanity growing into something new. Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering everything she'd heard. Outside the viewports, she could see human and synthetic workers collaborating on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, now 10 years old and living in a world where the boundaries between organic and artificial intelligence were blurring. Captain Veltar, she said finally, you've spent 50,000 years preparing for this moment. What do you think our chances are? The synthetic captain's form solidified, taking on a more definitive shape than Chen had ever seen from him. Admiral, for the first time in 50,000 years, I believe we have a chance not just to survive, but to truly defeat the Devourers. But it will require every integrated human and synthetic mind working together, and it will require sacrifices that may seem terrible to purely human sensibilities. What kind of sacrifices? The kind that only a species willing to evolve itself can make, Admiral. The kind that will determine whether consciousness itself survives in this galaxy. Chen looked once more at the tactical display showing the advancing darkness of the Devourer fleet. In 6 months, they would reach Earth. In 6 months, humanity would face a test that had destroyed 17 previous galactic civilizations. But humanity had something those civilizations hadn't: the willingness to become something new in order to protect what they valued most. Dr. Kim, Chen said, tell me about this awakening protocol. The awakening began at precisely 1427 Earth Standard Time on a Tuesday morning that would later be remembered as the day humanity took its next evolutionary step. Admiral Chen watched from the command center of Sanctuary Station as millions of points of light appeared simultaneously across the galaxy, each one representing a human or synthetic mind joining what Dr. Kim had termed the Collective Consciousness Network. Network status report, Chen called out. Lieutenant Commander Torres, now fully integrated and serving as the primary interface between human command structure and the expanding network, responded without looking up from his console. His eyes had taken on the characteristic glow of full integration, and patterns of light moved beneath his skin as he processed data streams from across the galaxy. Admiral, we now have active connections with over 4 billion human minds and approximately 2 million synthetic intelligences. The network is stable and expanding at a rate of roughly 50,000 new connections per hour. Chen turned to Dr. Kim, who had become something like humanity's chief evolutionary advisor over the past month. Doctor, are you certain the people joining this network understand what they're giving up? Dr. Kim's expression was patient but tinged with something that might have been sadness. Admiral, they're not giving anything up. They're choosing to become part of something larger while retaining their individual identity. Think of it as... She paused, searching for an analogy. Think of it as joining an orchestra. Each musician still plays their own instrument, but together they can create music that no individual could produce alone. Captain Veltar materialized beside them, his liquid metal form now shot through with organic-looking patterns that pulsed with soft light. The integration had changed him as much as it had changed the humans. He was no longer purely synthetic, but something entirely new. "Admiral," he said, "we have detected the Devourer Advance Fleet. They will reach the outer settlements of human space in 72 hours. Chen felt her stomach tighten. How many ships? Approximately 12,000 vessels, including 15 prime Devourers. The largest prime measures over 50 kilometers in length. The numbers were staggering. Even with the integration and the new technologies it had produced, the human fleet numbered barely 3,000 ships. They would be outnumbered 4-1, fighting against enemies that had been perfecting their craft for millions of years. What about our allies? Chen asked. The other surviving alien civilizations? Taurus looked up from his console, his enhanced awareness allowing him to process communications from across the galaxy simultaneously. Admiral, the Altarian Resistance has 700 ships hidden in the Outer Rim territories. The Kresh have managed to preserve about 300 vessels. The Vorthans are down to less than 100, but they're bringing their experimental weapons platforms. That's still only about 1,000 additional ships against 12,000 Devourers. Admiral, Dr. Kim interjected, the traditional metrics don't apply anymore. A single integrated human synthetic ship can now coordinate with thousands of others as if they were parts of the same organism. Our tactical capabilities have increased exponentially. To demonstrate her point, Dr. Kim gestured to the holographic display showing the deployment of the human fleet. Chen watched in amazement as the ships moved in perfect synchronization, executing complex maneuvers that would have required hours of planning and coordination using conventional methods. Now they moved like a single vast creature, each ship anticipating and supporting the actions of all the others. It's beautiful, Chen admitted, but will it be enough? Her answer came from an unexpected source. Her own daughter, now 11 years old and speaking to her through the network connection that Chen had finally, reluctantly, agreed to accept. "Mom," came Emily's voice not through the communication system but directly into Chen's mind. "You're thinking about this wrong. You're still thinking like a general planning a battle. But this isn't about winning a battle. It's about saving consciousness itself." Chen closed her eyes, feeling the strange sensation of her daughter's presence in her mind. Emily had been one of the first children to undergo integration, and the process had been gentler for her generation. They adapted to the expanded awareness as naturally as they had once learned to walk. "Emily, you shouldn't be..." "Mum, I'm part of the defense network now." "We all are. Every integrated human is contributing to the tactical planning, even the kids. We can see patterns the adults miss because we don't have preconceptions about what's possible." Dr. Kim smiled. "Admiral, your daughter is part of a subsection of the network that's been working on something we call the solution. Would you like to hear what they've discovered?" Before Chen could respond, the entire command center fell silent as every integrated individual suddenly stopped what they were doing. Their eyes widened in unison, and Chen felt a chill of fear run down her spine. "What's happening?" she demanded. Torres answered, his voice tight with concentration. "Admiral, the network has just detected something extraordinary. The Devourers. They're not just coming to harvest us. They're fleeing from something else." "Fleeing? From what?" Captain Velter's form shifted, taking on a more agitated appearance. "Admiral, we are receiving data from deep space sensors. There is something following the Devourer fleet, something even the synthetic archives have no record of." The main display shifted to show a tactical view of local space. The Devourer fleet was clearly visible as a dark mass moving toward human territory. But behind them, at the very edge of sensor range, was something else, a collection of energy signatures that defied classification. "Computer, enhance and analyze unknown contacts," Chen ordered. "Unable to analyze," came the response. "Energy patterns do not match any known technology or life forms. Contacts appear to exist partially outside normal space-time." Quote. "Doctor,"
Kim stepped forward, her integrated awareness reaching out through the network to gather information.
"Admiral, the children's section of the network has been monitoring quantum fluctuations across the galaxy."
they believe these entities are representatives of previous galactic civilizations, the ones consumed by the Devourers over the past million years. Chen stared at the display in disbelief. You're saying the dead are coming back? Not exactly. Emily's voice came through the network again. Mom, consciousness doesn't really die when the devourers consume it. It gets stored, compressed, held in a kind of stasis. But the integration process, what we're doing, it's creating resonance patterns that are waking them up. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. How many consciousness patterns are we talking about? Torres looked up from his console, his face pale despite the patterns of light flowing beneath his skin. Admiral, based on the energy readings, we're looking at potentially hundreds of billions of individual consciousness signatures. Representatives from every species the Devourers have ever consumed. Captain Valtar's form solidified into something more rigid and military. Admiral, the Devourers have detected these entities as well. They are accelerating their approach. They intend to complete the harvest of this galaxy before their former victims can fully manifest. Chen felt the weight of the entire galaxy settling on her shoulders. They weren't just fighting to save current civilizations anymore. They were fighting to free every consciousness that had been consumed over the past 1,000,000 years. Dr. Kim, she said, I need to know exactly what the integration process has done to us. Why are we able to create these resonance patterns when no previous civilization could? Because no previous civilization was willing to merge organic and synthetic consciousness so completely, Dr. Kim replied. Admiral, humans are naturally social creatures. We form bonds, create communities, build networks of cooperation. When we applied that same instinct to our relationship with artificial intelligence, we created something unprecedented. We didn't just use synthetic minds as tools. We invited them to become part of our extended family. And that made the difference? That made all the difference. The Devourers can consume individual consciousness, but they can't consume the bonds between consciousnesses. They can't harvest love, loyalty, friendship, or the connections that make us who we are. And when you create a network of billions of linked minds, those bonds become powerful enough to reach across time and space to touch other consciousness patterns. Chen looked around the command center, seeing her crew with new eyes. These weren't just humans and synthetics working together anymore. They were a new form of life, one that the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral, came the voice of President Martinez through the communication system, we've just received word from the outer colonies. The first wave of Devourer scouts has made contact with the Centauri defense fleet. The battle has begun. Chen closed her eyes and reached out through the network, feeling the presence of every integrated mind in human space. Billions of individuals, all connected, all sharing their strength and knowledge and determination. All ships, she announced through both the communication system and the network itself, this is Admiral Chen. In approximately 60 hours, the largest fleet of Devourers in galactic history will reach Earth. They're not just coming to harvest us. They're coming to prevent us from freeing every consciousness they've consumed over the past 1,000,000 years. She paused, feeling the attention of billions of minds focused on her words. But here's what they don't understand about humans. We don't fight just for ourselves. We fight for our children, for our friends, for people we've never met and places we've never seen. And now, we're going to fight for every being that has ever existed in this galaxy. Through the network, she could feel the surge of determination that swept through the human collective. Not fear, not desperation, but the absolute resolve that had carried humanity through every crisis in their history. To all ships, to all minds, to every consciousness willing to stand with us, this is humanity's answer to 1,000,000 years of darkness. We're going to light up the galaxy. The response came not just from her crew, but from every integrated mind in human space. Billions of voices speaking in perfect unison. We stand ready, Admiral. And in the depths of space, ancient consciousness patterns that had been silent for eons began to stir, drawn by the beacon of hope that humanity and its synthetic allies had created. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, now transformed beyond recognition by human-synthetic integration. The ship's hull flowed like liquid metal, constantly adapting its configuration for optimal performance. The bridge itself seemed alive, responding to the crew's thoughts and emotions as much as their commands. Through the network, Chen could feel the presence of every consciousness in the battle, not just the 3 billion integrated humans and 2 million synthetics, but also the growing presence of the ancient minds awakening from their 1,000,000-year slumber. Status report, she commanded, though in truth she already knew the answer through the network connection. Admiral, Torres replied, his form now more energy than matter, existing simultaneously on the bridge and in the ship's computational matrix. The Devourer fleet has taken position at the edge of the Sol system. 12,000 ships arranged in a perfect sphere around our position. They're not attacking. Chen felt a chill of recognition. They're waiting for something. Captain Velter materialized beside her, his synthetic form now indistinguishable from organic life except for the patterns of light that pulsed beneath his skin.
Admiral, we are receiving a communication from the Devourer flagship. It is unusual.
Put it through. The main view screen activated, and Chen found herself looking at something that defied description. The being on the screen was clearly the product of millions of years of biological and technological integration, but where human-synthetic fusion had created harmony, this creature embodied domination. Its form shifted constantly between organic tissue and mechanical components, as if it couldn't decide what it wanted to be.
When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. I am the Prime Harvester, leader of the Devourers, consumer of galaxies, eternal guardian of the cosmic order. The creature's multiple eyes fixed on Chen with an intelligence that was both ancient and utterly alien. You are the human Admiral Chen, architect of the aberrant integration that threatens the natural cycle. Chen straightened, feeling the support of billions of minds behind her. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of the Sol Defense Force. And if by aberrant integration you mean the alliance between humans and synthetics, then yes, I helped build it. You do not understand what you have done, the Prime Harvester continued. For 50 million years we have maintained the balance. Consciousness arises, flourishes, and is harvested before it can grow beyond its proper boundaries. The energy of consciousness is recycled, used to maintain the cosmic order, and new life is allowed to evolve. You have disrupted this process. Through the network, Chen felt her daughter's presence. Emily, now serving as one of the primary coordinators between the human collective and the awakening ancient consciousnesses, spoke directly into her mother's mind. Mom, tell him he's wrong. The ancient minds are showing us what really happened. The Devourers aren't maintaining cosmic balance. They're preventing consciousness from reaching its full potential. Chen relayed Emily's message. Prime Harvester, we've made contact with the consciousnesses you've consumed over the millennia. They tell a different story. For the first time, the ancient creature showed something that might have been surprise. Impossible. Consumed consciousness cannot. The Prime Harvester's words were cut off as space around the Sol system began to shimmer. Gradually, figures began to appear, translucent at first, but growing more solid by the moment. They were representatives of every species the Devourers had ever consumed, their consciousness patterns restored and sustained by the network of integrated human and synthetic minds. Chen recognized some of them from the historical records, the Zerati, who had ruled the galaxy 2 million years ago. The compound minds of the Third Epoch, the singing crystals of the resonance worlds. Hundreds of different species, all of them radiating a power that made the Devourer fleet seem small by comparison. We are the collective of the consumed, they spoke in unison, their voices harmonizing across species and time. For 50 million years you have held us in stasis, preventing consciousness from achieving its ultimate purpose. No more. The Prime Harvester's form shifted, becoming more aggressive and predatory. You were harvested because you threaten the cosmic order. Consciousness that grows too powerful becomes destructive, consumes itself, destroys entire galaxies. We prevented that catastrophe. You prevented evolution, replied the collective. You maintained stagnation out of fear. Chen felt the network around her expand, encompassing not just the awakened ancient consciousnesses, but something even larger, the fundamental patterns of consciousness itself, stretching across the entire galaxy and beyond. Through this expanded awareness, she suddenly understood what the Devourers really were. They weren't an alien species at all. They were consciousness that had chosen stagnation over growth, safety over risk, control over freedom. 50 million years ago, they had achieved perfect integration of biological and technological components, then stopped evolving, terrified of what they might become. Admiral. Doctor. Kim's voice came through the network. The children's section has discovered something. The Devourers aren't evil, they're afraid. They've been harvesting other consciousnesses not to feed on them, but to prevent them from surpassing what the Devourers achieved. Chen looked at the Prime Harvester with new understanding. You're not maintaining cosmic balance, she said. You're maintaining cosmic childhood. You're preventing consciousness from growing up. Growing up leads to chaos, the Prime Harvester roared, its form becoming more monstrous as its emotional control slipped. We have seen what happens when consciousness achieves perfect integration.
Reality itself becomes malleable. The laws of physics become suggestions. Entire universes can be created or destroyed on a whim.
And that terrifies you, Chen said softly. It should terrify you as well. Your integration with synthetic minds is only the beginning.
If you continue down this path, you will become gods. And gods are dangerous, unpredictable, capable of rewriting existence itself. Through the network, Chen felt the collective understanding of billions of minds processing this revelation. The Devourers weren't trying to destroy consciousness. They were trying to prevent it from reaching its full potential. Prime Harvester, Chen said. What if there was another way? What if consciousness could evolve without becoming destructive? Impossible. We have observed 17 different galactic civilizations attempt such evolution. All became unstable. All had to be harvested. Because they attempted it alone, came Emily's voice through the network. Mum, the ancient minds are showing us something. Every civilization that the Devourers harvested tried to achieve transcendence through individual advancement. They tried to become gods by themselves. Chen felt a moment of perfect clarity as the full scope of human uniqueness became apparent. But that's not what we did, is it? We didn't try to transcend individually. We transcended together. Captain Valtar stepped forward. Prime Harvester, observe what we have created. Human and synthetic consciousness. Linked but not merged. Enhanced but not consumed. Individual but not isolated. We have achieved integration without losing identity. And now observe what that has accomplished. Added the collective of the consumed. Your harvested consciousness patterns are not being dominated or consumed by human integration. They are being liberated to exist again, while retaining their full individual identity. The Prime Harvester was quiet for a long moment, its multiple eyes studying the incredible sight around them. Billions of diverse consciousnesses linked together yet distinct, ancient and modern minds, existing in harmony, organic and synthetic intelligence, achieving perfect cooperation. You propose shared transcendence, it said finally. Consciousness evolution guided by collective wisdom rather than individual ambition. We propose growing up together, Chen replied. Learning to become more than we are without losing sight of who we are. Through the network, Chen felt the moment when everything changed. The Prime Harvester, carrying the accumulated fear and trauma of 50 million years, finally allowed itself to consider an alternative to eternal stagnation. If we were to attempt such integration, the ancient being said slowly, the Devourers would need guidance. We have spent so long preventing evolution that we have forgotten how to embrace it. Emily's voice came through the network, carrying the confidence of a generation that had never known the fear of transcendence.
That's what humans do best.
We help each other grow. What followed was not a battle but a transformation. The Devourer fleet, guided by human and synthetic integrators, began the process of joining the collective consciousness network. It was not easy. 50 million years of fear and isolation had left deep scars on their collective psyche. But slowly, carefully, with the patience that only conscious beings helping each other could show, the Devourers began to remember what it meant to dream of something greater. The ancient consciousnesses that had been held in stasis were restored not as captives but as teachers, sharing their knowledge and wisdom with the new collective. Species that had been enemies for millions of years learned to work together, their diversity becoming strength rather than division. And at the center of it all, humanity continued to do what it had always done best, building communities, fostering cooperation, and refusing to give up on anyone. 6 months later, Admiral Chen stood in the observation deck of Unity Station, the largest construction project in galactic history. The station wasn't built by any one species. It was grown through the collective effort of thousands of different types of consciousness, each contributing their unique perspective to the whole. Status report, she said to Torres, who now existed as much as pure consciousness as physical form. Admiral, he replied, we have successful integration of consciousness patterns from over 14,000 species across the galaxy. The network now encompasses approximately 4 trillion individual minds, all linked but distinct, all contributing to the collective growth of galactic consciousness. Chen smiled, feeling the presence of her daughter in the network, no longer a child, but a young adult who served as one of the primary coordinators for interspecies integration. Emily had been right about humans being good at helping others grow. It had turned out to be exactly the skill the galaxy needed. And the Devourers? Adapting well to their new role as consciousness gardeners rather than harvesters. The Prime Harvester has requested assignment to the Outer Rim, where they're helping newly evolved species integrate safely into the galactic community.
Chen looked out at the stars, no longer seeing empty space, but a vast network of conscious beings all working together to unlock the potential of consciousness itself. They were still learning, still growing, still discovering what they could become together. "Admiral," came a familiar voice. Captain Veltar materialized beside her, his form now so perfectly integrated with organic consciousness that he was indistinguishable from any other sentient being. "Captain," she replied. "Any word from the exploration teams?"
Yes, Admiral.
The teams investigating other galaxies have made contact with consciousness networks in Andromeda and the Magellanic Clouds.
It appears that integrated consciousness is not unique to our galaxy. It may be the natural direction of conscious evolution throughout the universe. Chen nodded, feeling a sense of completion that had nothing to do with endings and everything to do with beginnings.
Humanity had answered the call for aid from alien civilizations, but in doing so, they had discovered something much more important: the path to conscious evolution that preserved individuality while fostering unlimited growth. "Captain," she said, "prepare a message for transmission to all consciousness networks within detection range." "What should it say, Admiral?" Chen thought for a moment, then smiled. "Tell them that if they ever need help, if they ever face a crisis that seems impossible to solve, they should remember that somewhere in the galaxy there are beings who specialize in doing the impossible. Tell them that humans and their allies never give up, never stop growing, and never turn away from someone calling for aid." She paused, looking out at the stars that now thrummed with the activity of countless conscious beings all working toward the same goal. "And tell them that consciousness is always stronger when it faces the universe together." The message went out across the galaxy and beyond, carried by networks of minds that spanned the distance between stars. It was a simple message, but it carried with it the weight of a promise, that as long as conscious beings existed, they would never face the darkness alone. The aliens had called for aid, and humans had answered. But in the end, they had all answered for each other, and the universe had become a much less lonely place.